Hello everybody, welcome to a much requested video where we're going to talk about how we store Arkham Horror, the card game. Uh, uh, in the case of Travis, for example, he has everything. I don't have everything. I don't know if Bryn has everything, but we have a lot. And we've had to figure out the best way how to store the game. And luckily, we all store the game pretty much the exact same way. There's some slight differences. But we do think that this is the best way for us to store the card game, so we're going to share it with you. At the beginning, I want to say that some people might, you see a lot of people share online, they have these fancy boxes that they store things in. You open it, creak it open, and like you hear the voice Cthulhu say something, and it like looks really nice. We don't do that. For me especially, because we have a board game channel, efficiency and just cheapness is very big for me for my storage, so I think that's going to reflect that here. But let's dive in. Travis, I'll let you take the lead because these are your pictures for how do you store your player cards.
Yeah, so for my player cards to start off, I have 6 binders, as you can see in the left slide, 1 per color, and then the white one has all the investigators, neutral cards, and weaknesses in it. By those inside those binders, the cards are just sorted by level. So all the level 0 cards are together, no particular order for them. Then all the level 1 cards, all level 2, and so on. I do that because it's just
easy.
It's easy, and the amount of time it would take to sort them alphabetically or whatever isn't worth the amount of time that I would spend looking for a card. That being said, with the massive injection of player cards from the starter decks, I am probably going to be sorting them, at least the level 0 ones, by asset, event, and skill in the near future. But this is what it is right now.
Bryn, how do you store yours for player cards?
I have a couple of I believe they're 2.5-inch binders. They may be 3-inch binders. I have 2 of them. I sort their one binder has blue, yellow, and green. The other has like purple, red, colorless, the bonded cards, and the multicolored stuff in it.
Do you also sort yours by level?
Yeah. I just sort them by level, which is largely because Travis does, and it turns out it's very easy, and I'm fairly lazy.
Yeah, it's so I store all mine in one giant binder.
You savage.
And, and I also sort mine by level. I first sorted them by, when I was first starting out, with only up to actually just up to Carcosa, I sorted them by release. And then when I was like, this is a nightmare, and I sorted them by level, it became 100 times easier. I highly recommend it. I think Travis's asset event skill split is also really clean. But I think the best part about sorting by level is when you play it with new players, it's so much easier for them to flip through the binder to see what they can afford with their experience. And it's really nice that way.
When I've been playing with my family or new players, and actually on that note, when we build their deck, we go through the experience options as well and build them sort of like a little upgrade package, like what comes with the investigator decks.
Nice.
So that they're never overwhelmed when it's time to spend their experience.
That's very smart. We also our player cards are also like the investigators. Travis, because you have your white binder, which I believe are your investigators and your neutrals and your weaknesses, right?
Yep, as well as the multicolor cards go in there as well. You can see on the left side of that, there's like a tiny printed page peeking out. That's where I keep all the information. It's just a Word document I typed up about the taboo list as a reminder in case we need a quick reference. And then, yeah, in the picture, I sort the investigators by cycle because that's how I like, and it's easier to put them in that way. And then I have all of the book investigators together as pictured. They're sorted this way so that way you can see investigator always goes on the left sleeve, and then their personal weakness always goes on the right side, and all of their personal assets go in the middle. If there's multiple personal assets that are different, I will usually flip one around so that way you can see it just by flipping the page over and don't have to take them out, similar to how I've done the replacement rules you can see in the cards on the left page of that image. In addition to that, That's something else I was going to say about the investigators. Anyway, the weaknesses are sorted chronologically by release date. Again, just because it's easier to just put them in the order that they came out.
Yeah.
You know?
Mine's very similar to Travis. I do the investigator on the left, assets in the middle, flipping if there's extra, and then weaknesses on the right. I don't have an order. I just put them in the order I got them, but it's pretty much the exact same. And my investigators and my weaknesses are in their own smaller binder. They're not in the big giant binder with everything else. Brand, do you have any similarities or differences here to these?
I store my investigator cards and weaknesses in the same binder with my scenario sheets and rule books.
Sick. Sick.
Because at the beginning when I'm going through it, I need to be going through that binder anyway.
And we're going to get to scenario sheets, which when Bryn we'll get there, but I have much to thank Bryn for this, and hopefully if you're not doing it, you'll thank Bryn
that one was
too.
Bryn's idea.
Yeah. All right, storing encounter cards. As you can see, our player cards aren't sleeved, but I believe all of us, we relieve our encounter cards sleeved when we store them. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, we're not savages.
Yeah, we're not, yeah.
Well,
Bryn's like, well, slow down.
I mean, like, I'm not saying that storing your cards unsleeved makes you a savage, but playing with them unsleeved kind of does.
And we will be talking about sleeves at the end of this video as well.
Yeah. And it's just much easier to have them all sleeved in the same basic sets of color, so you can just shuffle them together instead of having to sleeve up the entire set at the beginning when you want to start playing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've purchased a lot of clear and black sleeves.
The top middle image is where I keep my encounter sets. I buy the return to boxes because they're great for storage, and I love how they look and the dividers they give you. The ease of access to when you need to set up with them is incredible, and I long for other sets to be released with their return tos. The two boxes on top are the Dream Eaters and the Circle Undone. Those are just Magic the Gathering fat packs, which I don't know if they still make boxes like that anymore.
Yes, they do.
They do. Okay, so if you play Magic, you probably have these lying around. If not, you might be able, if you want them, you can find someone who has them probably online. Otherwise, I would store them, actually I'll pass it to Bryn because he stores his unreturned to cards in these white boxes that are amazing.
Yeah, I think Travis also uses these, but they're just like
those are literally pictures of my cards.
Yeah. They're like BCW brands, either 550 counts or 800 counts are typically about the right size.
Yeah, I think the ones in this image are 800s, but that's because those are the standalones. The ones that I use for the scenarios before the return twos come out, 550 is like a snug fit, but it fits all the cards usually.
Yeah. 800 counts should also be very easy to find. If you go into your local hobby shop or card shop or comic shop even, and ask them if they have card storage boxes, they probably carry something very similar to this. Not necessarily the same brand, but it really doesn't matter. There's no difference. It's a cardboard box.
And we'll get to we'll talk about them more in detail, but like they're super cheap and super good.
Yeah,
like $1 cheap.
Yeah. Travis, is there anything you want to add for this?
The only thing I want to add is, like, I guess on the left side you can see my Return to the Night of the Zealot box. That's the one that I carry around. You can see it's a little beat up around the edges because it comes everywhere. I always use it. It's got all the base game and counter sets in it, right? This one, because it doesn't fill up, it only fills up like about 2/5 of the box. It's the actual core set and counter stuff. So I use it to actually store the current cycle as it comes out. So everything in front of that orange divider you can see is actually the Innsmouth conspiracy cards that have come out as of the taking of this picture that I've received. And then I also use it quite often to store my chaos bag and my extra chaos tokens, which you can see at the bottom there. The bag's not in here right now. But. And then sometimes if I'm going to Justin's, there's usually room for my deck in there as well.
Yeah. Yeah, his deck and the cards I borrow from his collection in my deck.
Yeah.
Sick. All right. All right, the scenario sheets. So, I have a binder just for these guys. And this was something that Bryn just brought and is like, hey, do you want these? There's like 100 in this pack I bought from Staples. They're just, what are they? They're just like, what are they even called?
They're called sheet protectors. These ones are like standard size, which is, it's like the A4 paper size, which is the same size as one of the scenario encounter sheets when you unfold it and flatten it out. They've got more than one page. We cut them apart.
Oh, I cut them. If you honestly,
oh, I cut them too. I was incredibly resistant to it initially, but like I once I did it to one of them, I never looked back.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I cut them. I because of this channel. I now, like, when I get to a board game, I throw away everything I immediately don't want. I don't respect anything in this tiny box. And as soon as I was like, cut them in half, do it. It's so nice to just be able to flip through a binder with everything.
Yeah, have it be like a book.
Yeah. Like,
you just pull out the sheets for the scenario you're playing right now, pop them back in when you're done.
Yep. Yep. And then, as you can see on Travis's picture there on the right, the big booklets, you also can just drop them into one of the sheets and they'll just sit in there protected just fine. It's great.
Yep. I just drop them in there and then I drop in the return to sheet right behind it. In addition to that, you can see I keep my campaign guides in the front little pocket of this binder. Campaign logs, is that what they're called?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's a similar little pocket at the back where I keep all of the little booklets for the standalone scenarios.
Sick. Cool. All right, these are the cheap boxes for storage. I believe that one is probably...
The one on the left is a 1600 count.
Yes, so that's actually one thing that I wanted to talk about too. That in an upcoming series, I want to talk about every Fantasy Flight living card game that I have played, and because people have requested it, I own all of them. And when you store them, it's a nightmare because they take up so much space. I do think that if you want to go this route, it can work really well as well, these big cheap boxes. Because the 1600 count is only $325, right? Like, they're pretty cheap still, right? The smaller one on the right is great for storing individual cycles, because you can also just write on them and you won't care because you spent $1.25 on the box, right? And 550, I buy 550s all the time because I use them to store my magic cubes and they're the perfect size. But 550 or 800 definitely are the way to go for those if you're looking for the exact sizes. And I believe every brand follows those sizes. Bryn would know more about that than I would, but
they don't all use the exact same numbering system. But they are the same size. I don't understand it myself. I've seen a couple of different brands where they market. There's one that markets a 500 count, and the BCW brand obviously is the one I'm most familiar with. They market a 550.
Yeah.
And I've even seen a 600 count, but they're all the exact same size of cardboard box. So clearly they're counting using different kinds of cards or something. But it doesn't really matter.
You'll find
the count they give you is for unsleeved cards, how many should fit in the box. But obviously, there's some wiggle room.
Yeah, but they're great. If you're looking for a box to store them in, you can't go wrong with these guys. They're fantastic, and they're sturdy too.
Yeah.
You might be it's a piece of cardboard. No, you could chuck it. You could kill someone with it. A box full of 550 filled with these cards. Chuck it at someone's head. They'll die before your cards do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I have a pile of these that I've owned for probably 8 years. They used to go around with me in my backpack. They're not pretty looking anymore, but they're still in one piece.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I got a couple of those too. Still functional.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
All right, now let's talk about sleeves. Travis, I'll let you go first, and then I'll talk about.
So these are the sleeves that I use, almost all of them. I also use ivories, but I didn't have a box of those, or Dragon Shield ivories. I didn't have a box of those hang around, unfortunately. So the clear sleeves go on anything double-sided, basically locations, scenario cards, agenda snacks, all that stuff. All of the encounter cards get sleeved in black. And then the ivories go on. So when you get cards, even though they're technically part of the scenario, sometimes they have a player card back.
Mm-hmm.
Those ones get the ivory sleeves. That usually means that they go into they can potentially go into an investigator's deck.
Yeah.
Quite often they are the reward cards for that scenario, but occasionally there's other ones.
Yeah, there's some like that where like you set them aside and they're just easy to note if they're a different color.
Yeah. And on the right side, we have these discontinued Fantasy Flight sleeves that I use for the little investigator mini cards, which Bryn has a neat solution to that he was using earlier that I'll talk about in a bit. But so yeah, the investigator mini cards go inside these 50 counts, which are, I'll grab the exact measurements here real quick.
Yeah, it's worth noting
they are
that just
mini
because
European board game size.
yeah, just because the Fantasy Flight brand ones are discontinued does not mean that you cannot get these. Both Arcane Tin Men, who are the company that produced Dragon Shields, and Ultimate Guard produce specialty size sleeves.
Mm-hmm.
They call them something different, but you should be able to find a sleeve with the same measurement.
And also now Fantasy Flight, they on their back of their things on this the Innsmouth Conspiracy here, they recommend one called Gamegenic. So if you just want to know exactly like what of this brand or what size, you can just look on the back of the box. But as Travis said, the Fantasy Flight ones, they are discontinued.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, not every... Sorry, go.
No, I'm moving on to the next thing. You finish talking.
Oh, okay. Not every hobby shop is going to carry these on the rack. You may have to go in and ask them to order in a set of the specific size you're looking for, because many hobby shops will not carry every specialty size sleeve there is because there are so many of them. But they likely will order them in for you if you ask them to. Mm-hmm. Or you could get them online too.
Yeah, and last one is these Perfect Fits. Perfect Fits are like a very thin sleeve that goes right over the card, and it fits to it very snugly. And the most common use for these is, I think, probably playing Magic again, where you put them over the top, so you put them on kind of upside down, and you put the normal sleeve the other way, and it keeps liquids and stuff out. And that's what I do for my investigator cards. Not that I'm super concerned about spilling liquid on them, but it also makes the cards a little bit thicker, so I don't accidentally shuffle my investigator cards in my deck absentmindedly. It makes them easier to identify. I just like the way it feels mostly. It's not necessary in any stretch. But and then for the cards I actually play with, I usually wear sleeves I have laying around. It's usually just Dragon Shields of various colors, but occasionally I'll have some katanas hanging around, or some just like random Ultra Pros or whatever. Their Eclipses were kind of nice. I use those for a little bit. But Dragon Shield's one I always come back to.
So before we go to myself or even Bryn, one thing to note with shields is that the money you put in directly determines the quality of the sleeve you're going to get. So Dragon Shields are expensive. 100 sleeves for 10 Canadian, roughly. Is that accurate?
It's like close to 12 or 13.
Yeah.
So they're expensive, but the Dragon Shield sleeves are really nice, and they have a great lifespan, and they just feel great to play with. I buy Ultra Pro sleeves, which are about $6 Canadian for 100, just because I'm buying with a budget through my streaming channel, so I don't want to get the fancy stuff, so I just buy the cheaper things. But Ultra Pros, they still work, but they're not as good as Dragon Shield. They don't feel as nice. But if you're looking for just something that if it breaks, you replace, and you just accept that that's going to be a thing. I mean, obviously, in all honesty, I've only had like maybe 2 of my Ultra Pros break from Arkham Horror. There's not like crazy amount of shuffling in the game, and I sleeve my player cards in Dragon Shields. I'd recommend what Travis says. Splurge and buy a pack of the Dragon Shields for your player cards. Because if you buy a 100, you get like 3 decks of that over time, right? And then you can sleeve your encounter cards in Ultra Pros if you are worried about your budget.
Yeah. To speak on how strong Dragon Shields are, I played Magic at least once a week for several years with Dragon Shields, and I'm not sure I've ever actually split a Dragon Shield while shuffling.
They're strong.
Yeah.
And on top of that, the black dragon shields that I use to sleeve my core set encounter cards. We've been playing this game for 4 years now, something like that. And I've only had to change them once, not because any of them broke or anything, but they just got like a little bit dirty. And that's like it took. That was recent. It took like 3.5 years of playing with them pretty much every campaign for them to be noticeably different from the others.
Yeah.
And it was like the core set ones that you use all the time, like the
it's like
Ancient
rats
Evils.
and ghouls and ancient
rats.
evils.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't even all the encounter sets.
Yeah, it was just like the ones that are really common.
Bryn, what about
Evils.
you for sleeves?
I use much the same. I use some different colors, but the same idea. I use the clear classics for my double-faced cards, one with an opaque back for my encounter cards, and I sleeve the cards that don't get shuffled into the deck, and start the game set aside. Like there are many encounter sets where you set aside the experiment and it never goes into the deck.
Mm-hmm.
I sleeve those ones in like gloss pinks because they stand out. Like not only do they look very different to the ones that I'm using, but they feel different too. So
that's disgusting, Bryn. You could have at least picked white.
No, I actually just had a pack of pink that I hadn't used for anything.
Nice.
God,
So
that
was how it
eyes.
started.
And then what
I'd open up my box and I'd see the pinks and I'd be like, what am I doing?
And then what is your ingenious hack for the small sleeves?
Yeah, if you don't want to buy specialty size sleeves for your investigator mini cards, if you put them sideways into the bottom of a sleeve and cut it in half, the sleeve, not the card.
Cut their card out.
Yeah, and you cut it widthwise, not lengthwise.
Yeah. And you cut so like you remove the top half of the sleeve. The bottom half of the sleeve should be about the right size to hold your investigator mini card.
Yeah. I just remember the time when we were playing and we all put our investigators down. Travis was in this perfect little sleeve. Bryn's was in his half cut, and I just put an unsleeved investigator card down.
Savage naked card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, sleeves definitely. It's if you are worried about it, there's a lot. Like honestly, I do think you want to protect your cards. This game has a lot of shuffling and a lot of touching cards. And just even buying something cheap to make sure that they don't get broken is totally okay. But if you want the best game feel for when you're playing and the best durability, the more money you'll spend, the better quality material you're going to get.
In budget-wise, from a budget perspective, I would recommend actually penny sleeves for your double-sided cards. Literally as cheap as you can get. And they don't get shuffled or anything, except in very rare occasions where you can just usually roll a die.
Yeah.
And then I would recommend probably Ultra Pros for your encounter decks.
Yes.
Those go for like $6 to $7 Canadian a pack. And then I would still recommend getting a pack of Dragon Shields for your player cards though. Just because for how long they last, you're going to save money over using Ultra Pros for those.
Yes, I second that. My only change is I don't like penny sleeves, so I would even just buy cheap, clear Ultra Pros for that. But that's just a me thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I'm talking like extreme budget.
Yeah, that is like the cheapest. If you want to spend the least amount of money on sleeves, do what Travis said. He's 100% right.
Yeah, it's also a lot cheaper to just buy sleeves than to spill your water on your cards and have to buy a new one.
Exactly.
But there's also other allegatories to Dragon Shield I think are acceptable. I think that the Ultimate Guard katanas are very nice as well. And the Ultra Pro Eclipses are almost as nice. They're a little bit shorter sometimes, and which I don't like personally. I think they're also a touch cheaper than the Dragon Shields, but I could be wrong. And then I find that they get a little bit dirtier easier. But they do have like a softer feel, a more soft plastic feel than the Dragon Shields, which are very inflexible and stiff. So,
sick.
If budget is a concern, you should also talk to whoever you're getting your sleeves from and see about possibly buying them by the case. Often, if you buy a case of them, which is usually like 10 packs, you'll get some sort of a break on it and end up paying about 15 to 25% less per pack if you're willing to pay for the whole case of them all at once. So that is probably the cheapest way to go about getting sleeves, is to buy them by however many they'll give you a discount on whatever the case break on that is.
Yeah, and honestly,
especially for your encounter cards.
Yeah.
You
and
will
honestly,
use
listen
them.
to Bryn. I don't want to say why, but just trust him. He knows what he's talking about here. Just trust the guy.
Hey, what's next? Or
Yeah, so another question we're asked is traveling with the cards. We have no elegant solution, so this is how Travis travels with his cards.
What do you mean no
my
elegant
place.
solution? Mine's flawless.
Well, let's see. Backpacks.
I got 2 bags full of cards. I got 2 shoulders, 1 for each bag.
It's great. Yeah, it's just
You put
there's
the
no
cards in the
elegant
backpack.
way. Just grab a backpack, put stuff in backpack, carry backpack.
Yeah, both of these bags have space for deck boxes on top too if I need to transport multiple decks. It's great.
Yeah, the thing
I'll be honest, the left one's like getting to be a little bit of a tight fit these days with all the player cards, but I still got a little ways to go.
Yeah, and the thing we do as well is like when we do the return twos or like we visit a cycle outside of our first play, Travis usually just has me use my encounter cards and he just brings his player cards. So no secrets.
Nope. Yeah. Usually when I'm bringing my cards somewhere, like I don't need to bring my encounter sets anyplace, so that does make things a lot easier for me. But I'll just put together a binder of the cards that my guy could play. So like, for example, if I'm building a Leo Anderson deck, I will put all of my blue cards and all of my green cards into a binder and bring that with me. And then usually I will bring one of the starter decks that plays similarly to the character I'm currently playing, in case my guy maybe dies.
Yeah,
just so that I have a backup version. Yeah, just in case, right? Like
just in case.
Character
if
death
someone's
is the
doing
thing.
that, it's you. If someone's gonna die, it's
probably
me.
me. So.
Sick. Well, that's how we store Arkham Horror the card game. If you have any questions about storage or other aspects of the game you want us to talk about, let us know in the comments below. Obviously, we do read them, and we like to make videos that you guys are interested in. So thanks for watching. Also, if you have not subscribed to our channel, consider subscribing. We make a lot of Arkham Horror the card game content. And if you would like to like this video, we would really appreciate it because it helps that YouTube algorithm throw this video to somebody else. And then maybe they'll like it and it'll get tossed to somebody else. And then suddenly, I don't know, we'll get PewDiePie on the channel. Probably not.
And suddenly Justin will be making money. Imagine that.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good one, and as always, GG's.